Yeah, very good afternoon. This is Saravanan. So I would like to share you the concept of cascading style sheet. Cascading style sheet is play a major role in designing of web pages. So without CSS, web pages are look like a normal, nothing impress you. There is no presentations at all. We want to make a web page as the impressive one, provide more presentations. Um, the users are would like to see the web pages repeatedly. CSS is play major role. Is very important concept. So I would like to share this the CSS right now. Yeah, cascading style sheet is a part of web technology. It should be having different types of settings for each and every tags which is used for making of web pages. Cascading style sheet is used to describe the presentation of documents. It defines the size, spacing, fonts, colors, layouts, etc. To improve the content accessibility of the web page, we must be use the cascading style sheet as it to make the improvement in flexibility of the web pages to making a menus, submenus, um, sliding windows like so. CSS is play a major role. It's to designed to separate the presentation from content. Due to CSS, all HTML presentation tags and attributes are deprecated from HTML. They have to cancel or they have to drop out some of the tags like font tag, center tag, etc. And they have to add some new settings in the CSS. CSS can be applied to any XML document also. So it just not just like to HTML and XHTML. CSS can specify different styles for different medias. This should be have enormous new features. It's like in CSS 3.0. Priority schemes determining which styles rules are applied to the elements which is available in the web pages. Cascade priorities are specificity are calculated and assigned to the corresponding tags or the content which is available in the web page. The child element in the HTML DOM tree is inherent from its parent. So the tag which is coming inside of another tag is called like a child tags or a child elements. So the outside tags are called like a parent tags. So the child elements is going to get the settings from parent tags. This should be is called like an override concepts. So it's like a structure of how the CSS is happening. Some CSS styles are inherited and some not able to inherit. Text related and list related properties are inherited. It's like in color settings, font style, font family, line height, text line, list style. Those are some of the properties settings which are inherited. Box related and positioning styles are not inherited. It's like a width, height, border, margin, padding, positions, float type. So these are all the different types of property settings. Those are not able to inherit the child elements. Anchor tag element is do not inherit the color and text decorations. Style sheets is consist of its own rules as selectors and decorations, properties, and its corresponding values. This should be having its own syntax. There is an rules and guidelines for declaring and using the CSS. So the syntax of CSS is having like a selector name. We have to provide the selector name, and there is a declaration block. that should be covering the open and closed braces. So the selector is like we have to give different types of selectors. So for an example of body is the selector name, and we have to use the open and close brace to identify the declaration block. And inside the declaration, there are so many declaration spots. We have to provide each and every declarations are having its own property and its corresponding value pairs. The property followed by we have to give an colon and followed by give that property corresponding value and end with the semicolon. That semicolon is going to identify the first declaration end. Likewise, we have to provide in so many declaration parts. The selectors are is separated by the commas and declarations are separated by using the semicolons, and property and value pairs are separated by using the colons. So we have to use the selectors like an H1, H2, H3. So we have to provide the same declaration parts to different selectors. So that situation we have to use like this. Selector determine which element the rule is applied to. All elements of specific type, it's like an tags, names. Those that match the specific attributes like an ID and class. Elements may be matched depending on how they are nested in the document tree. There are different types of selectors like type selector, tag type selectors. So directly we have to give the tag name. It's like an H1, H2, H3 and body and something like that. And we have to use the open brace and close brace to identify the declaration body, and inside we have to provide so many declarations like a font family, colon, Verdana, sans serif. And we have to use the element ID too. That element ID is start with an hash symbol. Hash followed by the name is an ID of the element. ID place we have to provide. And we may able to provide the element class name way of declarations. So if it is in class, we have to use the dot in front of the name. So we have to use hash means it's an ID name. Dot means it is in class name. Okay. And we have to use in selector can be is combined with the commas. So we have to use the commas to identify that tag name or an ID name or a class name. So each and everything is in separate selectors, and for the above we have to provide the same settings. Pseudo classes also be able to used for the CSS. It's like an hover, visited, active, long. These are different types of pseudo classes as we have to use in this declaration place. So for example, the anchor tag having the hover. So we have to set the pseudo class hover with the settings of color as red. So and we have to use the paragraph pseudo class like in first line. The first line is where we have to use the text transform uppercase, and like and we have to make a class name like a title dot title, that pseudo class like an before and after. So likewise we have to provide. So the selectors we have to use like a nesting way, that is match the related to the element placements, that is PA. Here we are not use the comma between the P and J, so we have to provide a P space J. That is that P is act as parent tag and A is act as a child tag. When the anchor tag A is come inside of the parent tag P, the time this particular declarations are going to apply. And there is a universal selector, that is we have to use the star as a universal selector. This is going to apply for all the content of that particular web page. So there is a default browser style. Browser have a default CSS styles. They use it when there are no CSS information or any other style informations are going to apply. So default styles is different browsers. Suppose Chrome or an IE or some other browsers as we are going to use means according to the browser there are some default settings are going to differ. It's like an based on the margins, paddings and font styles differ most often or usually is developer set reset them. star is an universal selector. I hope you know. It's like a margin 0 and padding 0. HTML content and CSS is the presentation. It can be linked in 3 ways. That is, we have to make a connection between HTML and CSS in 3 ways. That is, we have to use an inline way, internal style sheet, or an external style sheet. Internal style sheet is called like an embedded, and we have to use an external style sheet. We have to create a CSS and HTML separate, and by using the linked tag to make connections. So in inline style sheet, the CSS rules are applied the style attribute of each and every tags. So in the tag itself, we have to use the style attribute to settings. The CSS is called like an inline style sheet. And we have to use the style tag instead of the head tag or an body tag, as we have to provide the settings is called like an embedding style sheet or an internal style sheet. And we have to create a CSS rules on separate file with the extension of .css file. That is, we have to make a link between HTML and CSS by using the link tag. The link tag having an attribute like an real rel is going to identifying what type of relation it is. It is in style sheet, and it also having an hyperlink, hyper reference tag, that is href attribute. There is, we have to provide the path for accessing CSS settings through the way as we have to make a link between HTML and CSS files. These are all some of the basics, very important concepts which is available in the CSS. So I hope you understand about the syntax of CSS, the use of CSS, why we are using CSS in HTML, and the different types of separators, and the way as we have to make link between HTML and CSS. So I hope you understand this. I would like a lot to share this information with you. So thank you.